And a very big thank you to my clever helpers who confounded the enemy and have put me on the air, for I have much to say. I suppose that tonight's extraordinary effort to stop Moats for the first time in all these years, to literally wipe us from the internet, I suppose it's an indication that we are right over the target. Now, I don't know which of the issues that we're going to discuss tonight has prompted these extraordinary efforts at sabotage, but, well, let's just go through them and maybe then we'll see. We have a Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, who may be in from terrorist acts committed against his property by foreign nationals. In the case that we know so far, a Ukrainian foreign national. That's not entirely fanciful, because the Ukrainians are definitely involved in the 2 assassination attempts on Donald Trump before he became president. That much is obvious. Now, I despise Keir Starmer with every bone in my body, but I do not wish him or his family to come to any harm. What am I talking about? Well, a few days ago, no less than 3 properties, either belonging to or formerly belonging to Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, were attacked and firebombed, and the fire brigade had to valiantly race to the rescue of the property. Neither Keir Starmer nor his family were present in any of the properties, although his sister-in-law and her family were present in one of them. Quite quickly, the British police apprehended a 21-year-old Ukrainian from Sydenham. Now, Sydenham is a very long way in the south of London from the properties which were all in the north of London. It's not clear, because we haven't been told, how the police managed so swiftly to trace the arsonist. And the attempt to create fire, to endanger life and property, is a serious offense. And I'm going to try very hard not to stand on any legal eggshells that might be problematic for the prosecution of the case. The last thing, of course, we would like to do is adversely affect the course of justice by probing too deeply into the arson that now on social media practically everybody is talking about. I asked the following question on Twitter, and 1 million people viewed it in 21.5 hours. My question was this: how did a 21-year-old Ukrainian male model, for that is what he turned out to be, know the location of former properties of the Prime Minister Keir Starmer and current properties owned but not occupied by Keir Starmer, and a motor car formerly owned by Keir Starmer? How could a 21-year-old with, by all accounts, little command of the English language, how could he have known where to find these properties and this motor car? And why would he want to set them on fire? Why would he want to commit the serious offense of arson to the endangerment of life, which, if convicted, will see him in prison for many years? These are legitimate questions, and they would normally, in normal circumstances, if Britain had journalists, if Britain had broadcasters, if Britain had the kind of journalists that even in the 1960s, during the Profumo scandal, never mind in the 1970s, in the era of World in Action, in the era of the insight team in the Sunday Times, or even at the low end of the market, Neville Beck, of not so fond memory, of the not so fondly remembered News of the World. In normal times, when we had normal journalists, we would today know all about this 21-year-old Ukrainian male model. We'd have had pictures of him in his underpants. Actually, oh wait, we have more or less pictures of him in his underpants. Now, when I say male model, I'm not necessarily talking euphemistically. He may well have been a male model, but starting out in his career as a male model. He advertised himself as a male model at the extraordinary low rate of £20 per hour. Moreover, he was ready for the first photo shoot to give the first hour for free. So this was a young man of great entrepreneurial spirit. No doubt he was determined to break into the world of male models. Now, the cynical amongst you might be imagining that the man that is under arrest was ready to offer other services. And you would be right. He also advertised himself as a roofer. He was ready to fix your roof. I don't know, maybe fix your back door at the same time as fixing your roof. But I have no evidence that he was, as is being widely now reported, a rent boy. And even if he was a rent boy, that does not necessarily link him to the Prime Minister Keir Starmer at all. I've told you many times, but let me say it again, to clear up any misapprehension that there might be. I don't know or care anything about the sexuality of the victim of these crimes. And it's not relevant what the sexuality of the victim of these crimes is. I don't know if Keir Starmer prefers men or women, and I don't care. I don't care whether he's a top or a bottom. I don't care if he's active or passive. I don't know, and I don't care. But if our Prime Minister is at risk, either from terrorist attack or from a blackmailer, then I believe that we must be told. We must be told if our Prime Minister was the victim of arson attacks mounted by a foreign national on behalf of a foreign power or a foreign organization. That much is obvious. He was a Ukrainian. What kind of a Ukrainian? His father says a patriotic Ukrainian who does not speak Russian. That makes him a Western Ukrainian. That makes him a supporter of government of President Zelensky. That Prime Minister Keir Starmer is the world's foremost advocate for. Would not on the face of it, only on the face of it, seem likely that this attack on Keir Starmer's property, his private property, had anything to do with disappointment in Keir Starmer's political attitude to the Ukraine. But we need to know that. We need to be sure that this person setting these fires in the Prime Minister's properties was not acting for another state, was not acting for another foreign power. And he could have been, for all that we now know. He could have been acting for the Russians. He could have been acting for the Israelis. He could have been acting for Ouagadougou. He could have been acting for organized crime. We don't know, and that is the point. This is a matter of heightened public interest. Just because all the reporters in Fleet Street have put down their pens and written nothing about this does not make it other than a matter of the highest public interest. Just because the mainstream television has not broadcast any of these questions does not make it other than a matter of the highest public interest. And of course, if our Prime Minister has left himself open to blackmail, well, arguably, we need to know that even more. Because if any minister, Keir Starmer or any Prime Minister, has left himself open to blackmail, that means our country and its interests are open to blackmail. How could we know that a particular course of policy, either domestic or foreign, had not been influenced by a prime ministerial vulnerability to blackmail? So I think the country needs to be told. And on the face of it, we have a mystery here that simply must be addressed. How did a 21-year-old Ukrainian male model know the address of properties owned by Keir Starmer in the 1990s? How did he know the identity of a motor vehicle which has not been owned by Keir Starmer for some years? These are vitally important questions. And millions of people who have responded to me on social media demonstrate amply that these are matters of public interest. And so, who's going to answer them? I call on the Prime Minister to make clear if he knows or has ever met the individuals who have been arrested for alleged arson attacks on his property. I want to know if the Prime Minister knows them. I want to know what the Prime Minister knows and when he knew it. I don't want to be the George Whig in this picture. And George Whig had parliamentary privilege and used it ruthlessly to get to the truth of the Profumo affair in the early 1960s. I have no parliamentary privilege, but I do have a voice that is heard. And so I'm asking on behalf of, I believe, a substantial section of the British public and the international community at that. Did Keir Starmer ever meet the 21-year-old male model now under arrest and charged with arson attacks against his property, current and former? Now, I mentioned a significant new fact that emerged last evening, which is that a second man, this time not 21, but 26, a 26-year-old man was arrested by police at Luton Airport, where he or she, or however they identify, was seeking to board a plane. We have no idea of the identity of that 26-year-old man, even though it caused quite a kerfuffle at Luton Airport when they were arrested. We deserve to know. It would be significant to know. For example, if the person arrested, the 26-year-old man, if he was a Ukrainian. It would be important to know if he was a male model. It would be important to know if he was in any way connected to organized crime. It would be important to know if he was seeking to fly, I don't know, to Russia or to Israel or some other place. It's normal in Britain for the basic identity of people arrested in a high-profile swoop on one of Britain's great airports. It would be normal for basic biographical details to be released. At least the person's name. At least the person's nationality. And sometimes the person's occupation. That would be normal. And then we would have to wait to see if they were charged. And if charged, then we would have to be careful when discussing their subsequent trials. But in fact, no information has been released and no reason has been given as to why it has not been released. And again, I say, this time to the Metropolitan Police and to the Home Secretary, that she has an obligation, given all of the foregoing, given all of the circumstances surrounding this matter, she has an obligation to set our minds to the extent that they can be set at ease by releasing this basic biographic information. And in the absence of it, we're all forced to speculate. So I'm speculating that this is another Ukrainian. Luton Airport flies to Eastern Europe. I'm speculating it's another male model, or another roofer, or another whatever a door fixer is. That's what I'm speculating. I can only speculate because I've been given no information. But if my speculation were to be correct, then this would be a very grave matter indeed. All we'd need is a walk-on park by a Great Dane dog, and I don't know, Keith Vaz to pop up in the corner of the screen. It would be a situation last seen in the case of the Right Honourable Jeremy Thorpe, the leader of the Liberal Party, back in the 1970s. It would be a situation not that far distant from the Christine Keeler, John Profumo affair, involving individuals at the lower end of societal life, if you'll forgive me. I don't have a high opinion of the kind of male model that this fellow appears to be, but it would be a very strange conjunction, a very strange set of circumstances that would require reassurance from the front bench, either from the Home Secretary or from the Prime Minister. Now, I don't care if the Prime Minister survives all of this. I believe that the Prime Minister should demit office for just about every reason bar this. I'm not calling for Keir Starmer's resignation because his former houses got firebombed by a 21-year-old Ukrainian male model. He may be entirely innocent in that regard, as might the 21-year-old Ukrainian male model. After all, every man, woman is innocent in Britain until they are proven guilty. I want Keir Starmer to demit office because of his relationship with another Ukrainian. That Ukrainian, President Zelensky, as he calls himself and is called by the tame, subservient Western media incessantly when he is not, of course, President Zelensky. His presidential term long ago expired. Whatever he is, he's not President Zelensky, but our Prime Minister seems to have an unusually close relationship to him, an unusually warm relationship with him, one in which he pays our money to Mr. Zelensky. He's forever ponying up more and more millions, billions, 13 billions so far and counting. And Starmer has not even been in office for a year. I don't know what first attracted Keir Starmer to Volodymyr Zelensky. Maybe he just likes Ukrainians, though such people are not actually all that numerous in the world. Maybe he likes men in uniform. Maybe he likes the kind of rough trade look that Zelensky has even in front of Pope Leo. Maybe it's a reflection of the ancient hatred of Russia that has drawn Prime Minister Starmer to Mr. Zelensky. After all, that ancient hatred is at least 200 years old. Has little logic or rationality to it, but nonetheless informs so much of Western media commentary on the Ukraine. Anyway, the Ukraine war might be over at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Why 10 a.m.? Well, 10 a.m. Eastern time, so 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I think that is our time in London, because Donald Trump is going to be on the phone with Vladimir Putin, who is the president of the Russian Federation. It could be the mother of all phone calls. It might bring about a comprehensive ceasefire, but only if the root causes of this disastrous war that has killed well over 1 million people and maimed hundreds of thousands of people who survived, but many of whom wish they hadn't. Limbless individuals to be limping along on crutches or in wheelchairs for the rest of their life. People who've lost their minds at the sheer horror of this disastrous war. If Donald Trump and President Putin's phone call tomorrow manages to bring this to a halt and deal fundamentally with the questions which gave rise to it, nobody, I promise you, nobody will be happier than me and this show, the mother of all talk shows. After all, we are the people who opposed the war in Ukraine since it began in 2014, 11 long years ago. The fact that Piers Morgan et al. Don't seem to know that this war has been going on for 11 years is not my fault. I've tried so many times to educate him and all the others whose ignorance may be bliss for them, but is hell for their viewers and their readers' ability to understand how we got here. As it happens, and as you probably know, I'm something of an expert on the previous invasions of Russia across the Ukrainian plain, across the Ukrainian steppe. I'm something of an expert on the Second World War 80 years ago, which left 27 million citizens of Russia and of the USSR dead in the cold earth, and tens of millions more whose lives never recovered from the carnage, from the slaughter, and from the destruction of hundreds of thousands of towns, cities, villages, hamlets, and individual farms. Hundreds of thousands. I'm something of an expert on why it is that Russian people regard it as absolutely essential that their defenses from attack across the Ukrainian steppe are as deep and are as formidable as they can possibly be. It's an existential matter for them. And Putin has been telling Western statesmen since 2007 in Munich, in detail, how Ukraine was a red line for Russia, how the encroachment by NATO of thousands of kilometers to the east, when they promised that they would encroach not 1 inch to the east, was an existential matter for Russia, one on which Russia should not be tested, a red line that should not be crossed. Well, they crossed it. And now Russia will have to satisfy itself that this war, when it ends, will not have to be fought again by the sons of those who are fighting it now. From their point of view, no deal is better than a bad deal. From their point of view, they'd be better fighting all the way to Kiev, all the way to Lvov, than to make any kind of deal that would leave them vulnerable again to the events of the last 11 years. So, the Russian terms, as will be explained tomorrow, I have no doubt, by President Putin, are these: the protection and respect and full equal rights for Russian-speaking citizens in Ukraine, for the absolute neutrality on the Austrian model of whatever remains of the Ukrainian state. No Ukraine in NATO, no NATO in Ukraine. A different but substantially important difference. No Nazis glorifying the mass murderers of millions of Ukrainian Jews, of Poles, of partisans, of Ukrainian citizens loyal to the motherland. An end to the deification of the Nazi collaborators with the blood of millions of innocent people on their hands. And the demilitarization of this neutral Ukrainian state so that it can never again be used as a spear in the back of the once fraternal Russian people. And of course, the international recognition of the absorption into New Russia, Novorus, the territories already liberated, who have already voted in referenda that they wish to be part of the Russian Federation. If Donald Trump's not calling up, with all of that in mind, then he's probably wasting his time. Because Russia will not agree merely to a ceasefire. Not for 30 days, not for 3 days. If all that means is that the current regime in Kiev is rearmed, refinanced, refreshed, ready to begin the war from a stronger base than it currently stands upon. The Russians are not fools. They've been here before. They've been invaded by Napoleon before. They've been invaded by Sweden before. They've been invaded by Finland before. They've been invaded by Poland before. They've been invaded by Germany not once, but twice. And now they are facing the invasion by 27 NATO countries, EU and NATO countries, whose personnel, whose mercenaries, and whose weaponry and money has been on the battlefield this 11 years past. The Russians are not fools. They accepted Minsk I. They accepted Minsk II, only to be deceived. They will not accept Minsk III. They agreed to Istanbul I, signed it, initialed it, before Boris Johnson destroyed it. They will not agree to an Istanbul II. No, President Trump will have to go much farther than that. But if he does, and if we can see an end to this slaughter, then nobody will be happier than me. I have no idea how long I've been speaking. I have no idea at what time we even finally managed to get on the air. I fear that we've lost Colonel McGregor, our first guest, but I'm pretty sure we have still got the one and only Garland Nixon to comment on these and all other matters coming up after a short break. Stay tuned.